Hello music fans, welcome to my segment called What's New 2023, where I'm going to talk about new albums that came out over the last week in the metal, rock, and progressive worlds and give my quick first impressions on them. Today I'm going to be talking about 12 albums. It was a really busy week, probably the most new albums I listened to in 1 week so far, maybe in my life actually. And I'm going to talk about them in my order of preference, starting with Crown Lands, who released their album Fearless on March 31st. This is progressive rock, and it's very catchy. It's got some pop and bluesy influences, and this is the third album by this Canadian band. I got to represent my fellow Canadians here. I saw them live when they opened up for the Tea Party, and they were great. They blended vibes of Rush, Led Zeppelin, and Tool while remaining accessible and catchy for pop and radio rock listeners. The first single I heard from this was the 18-minute Prog epic album opener called Starlifter Fearless Part 2. It sounds a lot like Rush around the time of 2112, A Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres. The whole album keeps this Rush sound going with a couple moments that lead a little bit more towards Led Zeppelin than Rush. And if you've always liked the music of Rush but couldn't get into Geddy's vocals, give this band a try. They could be just what you're looking for. The vocals here I think are stronger than Geddy's. They're more accessible, easier on the ears. But I do respect Rush more. They pioneered the sound. I still do have great respect for Crown Lands though for keeping this sound going. They're more than just a copycat band. They do bring their own charm and flair and signature to the sound as well. Secondly, I want to talk about an album by the band M-Opus called At the Mercy of Manannan that came out on April 3rd. This is symphonic progressive rock, and it's the third album by this Irish band. And as with all their albums, this supposedly, hypothetically, and mythically comes from a year in rock history with the sound and production that implies. So while this is made in modern times, it supposedly comes from 1972 in the mythos of the band. And it does sound a little bit like it comes from that time, but I do feel like I can hear some modern sounds that wouldn't have existed then. So it's a little bit more, it sounds more modern than stuff from that time. But if you're a fan of bands like Yes and King Crimson, and you want to hear a modern band making music in the style of those band's classic 70s material, check this out. I listened to this on Bandcamp because I didn't see it on Spotify yet. I usually use Spotify to check out new albums, but Bandcamp's my fallback if I can't find it there. And next I want to talk about Overhead and their release Telepathic Minds. This is progressive metal / rock. It's the 6th album by this Finnish band, and I never heard anything by them before, so thanks to Nathan from the Nathan on Shuffle channel for making me aware of this. This is a fairly long double album, but if you're a fan of the band Clone, I think you'll like this. I feel like it's got some post-metal vibes similar to that, but also has catchy hooks. However, this is even more progressive than Clone. It has longer songs, including a 17-minute long epic title track, and it uses instruments like flute and more synthesizers. Next up, Martin Miller released Maze of My Mind. This is also progressive metal / rock. It's the 2nd album by this German guitarist. He's done a lot of cover songs, but this album is all original material. I also heard about this one from Nathan on Shuffle channel, so I'm getting tons of music recommendations from him. And he described the sound of this like a mix between Toto and Dream Theater. That's definitely an accurate description to my ears too. I kind of hear that. Next, I want to mention Poh Hock and his EP called Gallimaufry. This is progressive metal, and it's the 2nd EP from this amazing shred guitarist. And he's not only an amazingly inventive, fast, and clean guitar player, he's also a great composer. The EP brings even more variety than his last EP. It has some moments that sound almost like jazz, some prog rock moments, some metal moments, and some experimental bits thrown in from time to time. He brought in some great guest vocalists, including Robert Edens, the vocalist from the band Native Construct, which is now dissolved but released one of the greatest prog metal albums of this century, A Quiet World. And before they disbanded after just releasing that one album, and then they were done. But if anyone wishes they could hear some new Native Construct music, the song featuring Robert is likely the closest thing you'll get to that. And also, shameless plug, Poh Hock plays a guitar solo on one of my original songs called Purifery. I have a video for that on my channel. If I remember, I'll put a link to it here in the video. Maybe I will, who knows. I'm forgetful sometimes. But check that out if you want to hear more of his shredding along with one of my compositions. Next, I want to mention Sermon, and they released an album called Of Golden Verse, and this is progressive metal, and it's the second album by this one-man project from the UK. There's one anonymous band founder who plays all of the instruments, I think, except for drums. Drums are provided by James Stewart from Vader. Really cool, mysterious album here. Really well done. And Bury Tomorrow released The Seventh Son, and this is metalcore. It's the 7th album by this British band. I listened to their last album and thought it was kind of average, but I could hear that they had potential, so I checked this one out. I wanted to hear if they could do better on this one. Sure enough, they did, in my opinion. I'm impressed. It's a solid metalcore album in a time when listening to a metalcore album is taking a risk because they can be really hit or miss these days. But this has great clean vocal hooks, excellent harsh vocals, and I particularly like the album closer, The Carcass King, that features guest vocals from Cody Frost, and it's great to hear this band with some strong female vocals on the track. She does a great job on this song. And also on March 31st, Kingsmen released Bones Don't Lie, another metalcore album. This one's fairly melodic metalcore with pop, hard rock, and deathcore moments. It's the second album by this American band, and I never listened to anything by them before, but never heard a whole album by them before, but I did hear the single Dead Letter, and it's a powerful metal ballad. It's a slow burn that builds up to a heavy and intense breakdown, so I became interested to hear more. And I also like the track Catalyst. It kind of gave me Slipknot vibes. And then the track Prayer Man has some industrial vibes reminiscent of Rammstein, Marilyn Manson, and Rob Zombie. So there's some interesting variety here. I like how not every song sounds the same. On that same day, Nothing Nowhere released Void Eternal. This is post-hardcore with some emo rap, trap, and indie rock influences. It's the 5th album by this American singer, rapper, and songwriter. It's the stage name of Joseph Edward Mullerin, and most places describe his sound as emo rap. I can hear that, but I consider it more of a post-hardcore album because the music doesn't sound like rap music. The music is like a post-hardcore band. It sounds more like that than rap. And there's just as much like singing and screaming. There's a decent amount of rapping too, but it's not dominating the whole sound of the album. It actually kind of reminds me of Linkin Park. So imagine that kind of balance. I think if this came out at the time of Linkin Park's first 2 albums, people would have called it nu metal because it's got heavy guitars and rapping and singing. But since it came out now, like nu metal is a thing of the past, and people just call it emo rap, I guess. But I do think fans of bands like Linkin Park, Deftones, and Let Live will like this. One of the tracks on here, Venom, features Underoath, and that's probably my favorite track on the album. Another one, Tragedy, features Will Ramos of Lorna Shore, so check those out if you want to hear those collabs. I've got 3 more albums to talk about. So next I'm going to talk about Ad Infinitum. I think I said that right, I'm not sure. But their album Chapter 3, Downfall. This is symphonic power metal with progressive and melodic death metal influences. It's the 3rd album by this female-fronted Swiss band. And I want to mention City and Color. who released The Love Still Held Me Near on March 31st. This is alternative rock with Indian folk rock influences, and it's the 7th album by this Canadian artist, Dallas Green, who plays guitar in the post-hardcore band Alexis on Fire, but he also releases these alternative indie folk rock albums under the name City and Color, and they're just catchy, soft, simple, alternative indie folk rock songs, lots of clean guitars, nothing too inventive here, but it's all very well done. And lastly, I'll mention Puscifer and their remix album called Existential Reckoning Rewired. This is electronic with alternative, experimental, and industrial influences. And it's a reimagination of their album called Existential Reckoning. Puscifer enlists a variety of collaborators here, including Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, Phantogram, members of Tool, and more, to reimagine their most recent LP, which is from 2020. And this is a very danceable version of Existential Reckoning. I don't usually like remix albums. I still don't love this, but it is one of the better, if not the best, remix albums I've ever heard. And I also dropped my own remix EP recently, so check that out on my Bandcamp YouTube channel. I remix a song by Protest the Hero. I remix a song by Steven Wilson and King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I just did it for fun. I'm not like an expert producer or anything. I just had the stems for those songs and decided to mess around with them and see what kind of weird stuff I could make. So check that out on my channel if you're interested in remixes. And that's it for my What's New 2023. Hope you enjoyed this, found something new to check out. And until next time, peace out.